Okay, welcome back to Sports Renegades here on SportsNowChicago.com. I'm Ryan Stuprich.
And I'm Ryan Risky.
We talked about the Cubs and the postseason roster and some of the comments that Jake Arrieta and Miguel Montero made yesterday, but we're going to talk about now the 0-3 Bears. They host the Lions this Sunday.
Well, that's a home game, so they're destined to lose.
It's a home game, which they haven't won since October 4th of last year at home.
I'm going to that game, and I don't have high hopes for a win.
Oh, man. Well, that's too bad. But I guess there was nothing better to go to, so you got to go to the Bears game.
Well, that, and I'm going to Minnesota, and right now that looks like a loss, too. That's a Monday night game.
Yeah, that'll be a loss too. It's unfortunate the way that the season has turned out. I mean, they started 0-3 last year, but we didn't really feel like this because that was year one under John Fox and everything. But with all the injuries happening now and Jay Cutler out for who knows how long, there's talk he might not even be the starting quarterback when he comes back, which I think is a bunch of bull, but we'll see. And, all the injuries that have happened, but, I mean, this season, it's a dumpster fire before it even started.
Right now, I mean, it's become so obvious. The offensive play calling has been a disaster. Dowell Loggins' schemes on offense are not fooling anybody. That's why the offense is not scoring. And I think it's pretty clear the Bears will be looking for a new offensive coordinator next year. And if they keep losing like this, the McCaskies might lose their patience with John Fox.
It's possible. I think John Fox is a good coach. I don't think he knows how to tell time, which we found out last year.
His clock management isn't the best, except Tom Waddle had Adam Schefter on his show last week, and he asked him if he thought Jay Cutler would be back with the Bears next season. His response was, "It depends who the head coach is."
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And going back to Dowell Loggins, you were so right about him. I think after week one, you were saying how, this is going to turn bad, and Adam Gase left, and and him and Jay Cutler had a great relationship together, and he left for a head coaching job, and now we're stuck with Dowell Loggins. And I think the only reason why people liked Dowell Loggins last year is because Adam Gase made him look good.
Right. I mean, that could be. I mean, Dowell Loggins has been fired from 2 offensive coordinating positions already. I believe the first one was with Tennessee. I'll have to look that up. I'm pretty sure it was Tennessee.
That's no surprise.
The second one was the Browns.
I mean, he's with the worst of the worst and can't get the job done.
It's bad. I mean, and you can tell someone that's not a Bears fan could watch that and tell that this is a completely different looking offense.
Right, and I mean, obviously,
it's not just because Matt Forte and Martellus Bennett are gone.
Right,
it's because the scheming is not good, the play calling is terrible, the protection is awful. They have no run game.
Zero run game, and that's been the real killer. And now Jeremy Langford's out 4 to 6 weeks.
And people
so
are
now you're going to have Jordan Howard, the rookie from Purdue. I mean, he's not going to do anything.
Well, and the thing is, a lot of people are jumped on the Jordan Howard trail last
Those are just
week.
Big Ten fans that don't know any better.
That's also true, except one of the things is just like, he had a great game, like 9 carries for 44 yards or something. And then you have to look at the other side where 36 of those were on 1 carry. So that means he had 8 more carries for a total of 9 yards.
Way to go, buddy. I mean, it's just been embarrassing. And
yes, the 36-yard run was a really nice run.
Yeah.
Except there was also a really big hole to run
and
through. And
the game was already over.
Right, and they signed Joik Bell as a free agent.
Joik Bell. I mean, we know he had a couple good games with Detroit, maybe, but
that
was
were
never
against the Bears.
Yeah, but I mean, he never did anything. He's nothing special. But this is the problem when you have all these injuries. I mean, it sucks that they've had all these injuries. But even if the team was fully healthy, I still think they'd probably be 0-3.
Probably. And the thing with the injuries that's crazy is going into home opener against Philadelphia, the only injury they had was Kyle Fuller.
Right.
The next day,
everything happened.
And then the next day, John Fox tells reporters, I don't have anything to report. And then he listed off 8 injuries, thumb surgery for Danny Trevathan, and then Cutler would be out an extended period.
Yeah, and I mean Hoyer's nothing special. He sucked with the Browns. He's been bad, pretty much his whole career.
He's been good, and he's been good enough to play on like teams that are like a good team around him, and
like Houston,
be a good game manager and get him to the playoffs. Where if he was on Houston right now, I'm sure they might want him back after they've seen Brock Osweiler perform after paying him.
I still think Osweiler's a better quarterback than Hoyer.
He is, except right now I don't think Hoyer could lead that Texans team to the playoffs, especially with Watt potentially out for the season.
Well, that team I don't think is going to go to the playoffs. I mean, but with going back to the Bears and their injuries, it's ridiculous. And I think we were talking about this last week, where if they were going to cut Robbie Gould, and I know that's kind of a side issue. It doesn't really matter who's kicking field goals as long as they don't keep missing, which Connor Barth did in that home opener.
Well, it's also not an issue when they're losing by 20 points.
Yeah, I mean, it's a non-issue really. But if they wanted to cut him, to save money or whatever, because he was, a really high-paid, NFL player, they could have, not done that. But also,
they could have done that in the off, like when free agency started.
It was too late. First of all, you got a week before the season, and you cut Robbie Gould. It's like, okay, if you're going to do that,
this is after the 53-man roster was finalized,
and this is after they got rid of and this is after they decided not to re-sign Forte, and Martellus Bennett's gone. So it's kind of ridiculous. If they were going to do all that, I don't understand why they didn't just keep Robbie Gould.
The reasoning was when Connor Barth became available, they couldn't pass on it. I'm just thinking,
couldn't pass on him. Why not?
He got released by his other team for a reason. He didn't get released because he was like one of the most accurate kickers ever. And I love how I think Ryan Pace said like when they signed him that he's like an automatic make from from 35 yards or shorter, and
he
Robbie
misses the field goal.
And then he went and missed his first one from 31 yards, and where Robbie Gould was like 102 for 102 on those.
Yeah, I mean Robbie Gould was bad last year. There's no doubt about it. But if the Bears were going to be competitive, and the Bears were going to have 10 wins or something, Robbie Gould isn't going to miss in those situations.
Yeah, and that's a good point. And hindsight's 20/20 right now. I mean, even this is just a 3-game. Just looking at the first 3 games of the season, maybe they would have been better off in the offseason. They fired Mark Trestman if they actually had hired Adam Gase to be the head coach. We saw what he did last year with the offense.
Yeah,
we saw what he did
really
with
good.
Jay Cutler. I mean, he literally last season he proved he's one of the elite offensive minds.
Well, and
NFL.
also the Bears had all those. I think last year after they started 0-3, they started to get the ball rolling a little bit, and they should have beat the Broncos at home. They should have beat the 49ers at home. They should have beat the Redskins at home. They blew those games, but the offense was very good in those games.
Right, and you also need to throw in last year they started out 0-3, as you said. Except last year they played 3 of the 4 best teams in the NFC.
They did.
To start the season. They lost to Green Bay in a close game. Week 2, they were blown out by the Cardinals, except the offense still scored, I think, 28 points, and that was in a game Cutler got injured. Week 3, they played the Seahawks and got shut out with Jimmy Clausen at quarterback.
6-0 Seahawks at halftime.
At halftime, and then there was that long kickoff return touchdown that ended the game. That's different when you're like losing some kind of close competitive games that
and that's
competing.
The first year of this regime, so you don't feel as bad about it. But now year 2, you're supposed to be improving. Well, even with the injuries, you should still be improving.
Well, I mean, and the thing about that is, like as I said, they played arguably 3 of the top 4 teams in the NFC. The Panthers being the team they didn't play, and they were competitive in those games.
Right.
And even Seattle, as you said, 6-0 at halftime with Jimmy Clausen as quarterback.
It's pretty impressive.
So, I mean,
in Seattle.
And then you go and beat the Raiders at home for the only home win in the John Fox era.
Thanks to Robbie Gould, by the way.
and except then when you look at it this year, they're 0-3. Who have they lost to? They lost to a Texans team that was playing with an injured J.J. Watt and Brock Osweiler making his first start since getting a massive contract. They didn't look that good. They beat the Bears. Weeks 2 and 3, they played rookie quarterbacks. And we're getting blown out.
Right. So it's kind of ridiculous. I mean, I think we think that Carson Wentz is a pretty good quarterback, and he could be.
Did you actually? The funny thing about that is the Browns were threatening to fire every single scout that wanted them to draft Carson Wentz with the number 2 pick.
Stupid.
That's the Browns for you right there. Except regardless, he's been very good. Somehow no turnovers.
Yeah, the Cavaliers won this year, and the Indians have a good chance. They're a pretty good team, but I think it's safe to say that the Browns will not win it this year. So they won't get those 3 teams in their town.
No, I mean the Browns are still a mess, and
they've been a mess ever since the late '80s, pretty much.
Right. They can't find a quarterback, except anyway, that's besides the point. When you think about that, the Bears were facing a Texans team that had an injured J.J. Watt, even though he played, and then Brock Osweiler making his first
Hey, that
start.
was a good first half that they had. I think they were leading, 14-10 at half.
The only good half that they had all season. I remember
Pretty
people were
much.
like, man, that's the best half the Bears have played since they had Lovie Smith, and I'm just thinking... Again, if that's you people think that's the best half they've had in that long of a time, that means they've had some bad teams.
Right, and I mean, it's an exaggeration, but it's also kind of true.
I didn't think they played like that great to people being really high on the season already.
They made a lot of mistakes.
Then they go and blow the second half, and when you think about that, and then you play 2 rookie quarterbacks, they should have been 3-0. They're not 3-0.
Right.
They're 0-3.
Even if they were fully healthy, there's no way they'd be 3-0 right now. They might have had a win, against. Well, of course, they were pretty much fully healthy against Houston. I know they didn't have Pernell McPhee, but that they were pretty much all healthy there. And now you have no running back.
Your middle
maybe
line.
Kevin White as a bright spot. Who knows? He was okay against Dallas. He was pretty good, but
he was running
special.
short routes. He looked like he was running routes a little better. Except, you have McPhee out until week 8 at least.
Which is so stupid, because that goes back to last season, when instead of him getting his surgery towards the end of last season, when the season was already shot, they decided to play him.
Yeah, that goes to why was he playing when every week he was showing up questionable with
a knee injury. You shouldn't be playing when you have 4 or 5 wins, with a couple weeks to go. Season's over at that point. So stupid, because otherwise you'd have Pernell McPhee back right now, and he's one of the best defensive players on the team.
Right, and then throwing Trevathan's out.
Yeah.
And people do not seem to like Leonard Floyd right now. People seem to be down on him, and they were expected to have one of the best linebacking groups in the NFL, and right now you have half of it out with an injury.
Yeah.
It's like, so right now, it's in a flux. Kyle Fuller's on injured reserve right now, so they were thin at cornerback to begin with. Mm-hmm. Now they really don't have anyone. Tracy Porter's he was pretty good last year. He's all right this year, except, Fuller was a guy they were really counting on, and he's out.
Yeah, and he hasn't really performed since he's been here. This is his 3rd season, 4th season, something like that. And he hasn't really performed too well either. Anyway, the Bears host the Lions at Soldier Field. And good luck to you, Ryan, at that game. It'll probably make you upset, but...
they're starting to ruin Sundays.
Have fun at that game. I'll be at home watching the game that's not the Bears.
And you'll be able to turn it off at halftime when they're losing 21-3.
Yeah. So that'll be fun. That's the Bears. We're gonna be right back. We'll give some of our picks for the week. This is NFL Week 4. So stick around to Sports Renegades, sportsdownchicago.com.